Hi, so this is HackerRank, the platform that Pico uses to conduct most of its contests. If you're not registered already, register through signing up. If not, log in for developers and you'll be redirected to the HackerRank homepage. So you'll be provided a link of the contest. You can just directly copy paste here or just type the slug itself. In this case, it's a big brain moment. So you'll be redirected to the contest page. So generally the link that you get will be before the contest starts. So there'll be a countdown timer that's going on. Once it hits 0, you'll be redirected to the page where you'll be able to see all the questions. These admin options won't be available to you, obviously. It's only to the administrators of the contest. Beyond that, you'll be having the current leaderboard. You can compare your progress, you can review all your submissions, and in general, all your questions will be displayed here. If you click on a question, you'll be redirected to the question. You'll see the question statement itself, the input, constraints, output format, sample input and output, the editor itself, and here you can change whatever language you're comfortable with. If you just go back, you can view all the different questions. There's no particular order that you have to solve in. You can also see the submissions here, previous submissions. Generally the questions go from easy to hard, top to bottom, and you can just pick whatever order you want to solve it. Yep. Let's just go ahead and start solving question number 1. So just go to the question itself. Here we given the description of the question, which in general gives you a pretty good idea of what the question is about and gives you a good idea about the context of the question, right? So in the mystical land of ASCII, there's a secret treasure hidden by a magical gate. Unlock this gate, you must decipher the code hidden within a string of numbers and characters. You're given a string consisting of a single character. Yeah, so this is where the important stuff is, right? Okay, you're given a string consisting of a single character followed by a single integer separated by a space. Your task is to determine whether the ASCII value of the character is equal to the integer. If they are equal, print yes, otherwise print no. Cool. Here we given the input format, which basically tells you what and how exactly are you getting the input. If you see, you can directly see the sample input and output and get a pretty good general idea of what the question is giving you and what is the expected output. Here you can see ASCII value of A is 65, so it's a yes. ASCII value of 1 is not 97, so it's a no. One thing you have to keep in mind is the character, it is case sensitive, right? So if you write IES in small, it's not going to accept. It's very case sensitive because it's a direct one-to-one comparison that's going on behind the scenes, right? So if you look at the input again, so you get a single line consisting of a character which is of single length. So if you see mod C here, it basically represents a character, the length of the character, which is 1. So you get a single character. You won't be getting something like A or Z. Followed by a single integer, which is between that 0 to 127. Cool. And you're given the constraints here. So constraints basically give you a good idea about what the range of values that you can be expecting for a particular variable or a particular type, right? Beyond that, constraints also help you, if you don't completely get the idea of a question, advanced questions as such, it gives you a pretty good idea of what the expectation of the questionnaire is. Depending on the range, what is the complexity of the answer that they're expecting, you can decipher this. Okay, probably beyond the scope of this video, we'll cover this topic in another video if possible. Coming back to this, so output will be a single line consisting of yes if it's a match, otherwise it's a no. So let's just start with the code. So let's just switch over to Java supports, and you can see the input is in the form of string, right? A space 65. You can kind of assume it's like you're typing in the terminal, right? So A space 65, like how you accept inputs in, for example. So already the util class is imported here. So we use the scanner function to accept the inputs. And it's scanner function, scanner class. My bad. Character C, and then just go with sa.next, which basically accepts the entire string, and then you're only selecting the character at 0th position. and then this also accept the input integer or end. So then this takes care of the input, right? We just define the logic here then. Int of C then so yeah, Java uses Unicode, but then ASCII is backwards compatible with Unicode, so it's fine. Just run this code and see if it works. So when you run this code, the code is actually tested against our sample input here, and only when you submit the code and once you're done coding and submit, it checks against our hidden input cases. So in this case, it passed all the input cases and you're getting a complete score of 10. Let's just okay, so if you come back here, you notice, oh, the code is no longer here, right? So to get back the code, you can just go to submissions, you can just go to view results, you can see the code here, so just open it in terminal, and here you got the code. So let's just, for the sake of testing, change the kind of output we're expecting, right? So let me just run this, and you can see, yeah, it failed one of the test cases. And let's just submit it for the sake of experimentation and see what happens. So it's very interesting. So you can see it somewhat passed a few test cases and it didn't another few, and you can actually see it got 0 score, right? So in this case, the scoring system is binary. So if all the test cases are passed, only then you get complete score, otherwise you don't get at all. Another cases wherein you get partial score. If you are able to solve a few of these cases, only then you get a partial score. And obviously we didn't implement partial code here because you can just probably guess yes or no and get 50% of them right. Yeah, and there might be multiple reasons, right, why your test cases, like, it may not get accepted, maybe with how long it's taking to execute, or maybe syntax errors are usually not encountered in this stage. But still, so yeah. Another thing is, remember how I said this is like a string that you're accepting. So what if you actually accept it using the next line function, and then what is your thought process after that? What do you think about? If you know the answer, put it in the comment section below. Let's move on to the next question. Moving on to the next question, array what? So array what is a very simple, just print the sum of array elements given. Even though the question is very simple, it will give you a good foundational understanding of whatever the basics are required to solve almost all kind of problems, like almost, I'm saying, not data structures related, but basic mathematical, algorithmic, formula based questions. So if you just see, you'll be getting a bunch of integers. First line contains an integer n denoting the size of the array, and second line contains an n-spaced integer representing the array's elements. So you get the size of the array, which is 6, and then you get the 6 elements. You basically have to return, or in this case print, the sum of all the elements. And if you see the constraints, you see that n is up to 1000, and each element a of I, that is, also the range is up to 1000. You can just use an integer data type here and just print the sum. And so let's just get coding. Okay, so solving this in Java. The previous question, we solved it using scanner class, right? Like took the outputs using scanner class. I would highly recommend you to check out all the scanner class functions. How would you do that? Basically, you can just type in java doc scanner class, and then you'll be getting the list of all the functions that are there in this, constructors, functions, and then if you just scroll down, you can just find int, extent here, and the return type. So this way you can like basically search upon the different Java collections or Java classes that you can use. In this particular case, we'll use buffer reader. Buffer reader is slightly faster than scanner class. Actually, it's more efficient if you are expecting a very lengthy string. Why is that? If anyone knows the answer to that, probably put in the comments below. We'll be having another video putting into that if possible. So the train, the system line. So we created the buffer reader object, and then we're using the function of the class. First character is an integer which represents the size of the array. So we'll have a try catch block to capture any IO exceptions. So by default we'll be using the readline method, and so readline, what it returns. Okay, what does readline actually return? Let's just explore that. So readline returns string. Interesting. But what we need is an integer. Hence, you're going to use parseInt to convert that integer object to an integer object, and then we'll be so that's the first line taken care of. Second line, again we'll accept all the variables in a single soup. So we'll use a string variable, string array equal to readline, and split it based on spaces. That's what's given there, right? So this will basically create string array of all the values. So 1, 2, you get the point. Let's have another sum variable to store the sum. And if you actually notice, you don't really have to store the array in this case. You can just simply accept the values and then use a temporary variable to just keep adding the values to the sum. But this is particularly useful in multiple other questions where you have to actually retain the array, maybe reversing an array, for example. So we just do sum plus must be equal to, again, so what you had here was string of integers, convert that to integer type 1 by 1, array of I. So it iterates through each and every string list that's been stored and then converts it to integer and adds it to some variable. For this, we just print out sum. And any exception that we have, let's just catch it. I guess that does it. So let's try running this. Works. Submit the code. So while this is being submitted, okay, done. Chalo, works. I would highly recommend you to check out all the Java collections that can be used in structure that are there, hash maps, and how we can take in dynamic arrays, 2D arrays, and all that. Let's move on to the next question.
This is the explanation on the vowel counters to problem. You'll be given n strings and you have to print the total number of vowels in all the strings together. The strings that you're going to get are guaranteed to be having only small letters. They'll not contain any capitals, they'll not contain any special cases like spaces, underscores, dollar, at the rate, hash, nothing of that. And they won't be containing numbers. You have to print the number of vowels that you have as one integer. That's it. You're not supposed to print any extra stuff. Input format. First line will contain the integer n. So if you have 3 strings, the first line will contain the number 3. The next 3 lines, that is line number 2, 3, 4, will contain the strings. That is, the next n lines will contain strings 1 to string n. And any string will only contain small letters. Constraints. These are limitations of the input we are going to give to your program. You don't have to write the limitations into your program, but you can just build your program around this so it's easier for you. So first limitation that we are going to put for our test cases, not for your programs. You can put as you like for your programs. First limitation, you will have between 1 and 100 strings, that is n strings. N is always between 1 and 100. And then the length of a string that you're going to get, each string is also guaranteed to be between 1 and 100 characters in length. This does not include the null character, so you'll have to handle that separately. Now if you look at the the sample input, you have 1 as the first letter n, so you're going to read one string, home. In home there are 2 vowels, so you have to output 2. In the second sample input, you have 3 as the first line, so there will be 3 total strings that you have to read. The strings are jitter containing 2 vowels, fruit containing 2 vowels, and burglary containing 2 vowels, total of 6 vowels, so I'll have to output 6. So this is sample code. I have n to store the number of strings I'll have to read, vowel to store the number of vowels I encounter. I first read n and then I make a loop, go from I to n, and I read n strings, and then I make a loop inside that to go through every character in the string that I've read, string A, and check if it's a vowel. If it's a vowel, I increment it, and then finally after all of these operations get over, I print the number of vowels. On running, there might be some problems like this. Don't worry if it's a compile message. As long as your code is running, it's generally fine. Let's now go into solving in Java. Java has a little special scenario. Just a minute, I'll clear this. So scanner classes in Java is how we generally take input, but scanner is kind of a slow way of taking input. Still, for the sake of this competition, it is fine to use it. Now I'll store the number of strings in n, and I'll create a variable vowel for counting number of vowels I encounter. Then I'll need to have a string or a character array to store which string I'm going to input, or which string is going to come from the input. So I'll make a scanner class object, scanner equals new scanner system.n. Just a minute, spelling mistake. So I'll first do n equals next int. So now n has number of strings I'll be getting, and then for I equals 0 to n, I'll be reading the strings. So sc.next will return a string, and you cannot access the string directly, so you'll need to use a char array. So I'll just convert this to an array. So t is equal to next dot char array, to char array. Now we just iterate through this array. I advise you to use arrays for this instead of strings. Well, you can use strings, it's just that you need to use char at function instead of using s of j, or in this case t of j. So I'll again do t of j, that is one character, equals a vowel, that is a, e, i, o, u, also using the or logical operator. And if these conditions satisfy, I will increment vowels. And finally, I'll print the number of vowels I've encountered after going through all the strings using SOBL vowels. I'll run the code and there should be no problem. Yeah, there's no problem. I'll submit it, and it's fine to run it as many times as you want. You can submit it multiple times also, but generally I advise you to submit fewer times because it takes longer for us to read through the codes.